Hello, everybody, and it is November 5th, and today is Thursday. So we're going to go right into section 4 today, chapter 6. But first, I want to remind you, if you're getting this right now, if you haven't done that quiz, it's already going to be over in about 5 minutes. So it is 5 to 2 right now, and I'm not going to have this on by that time. So if you haven't done the quiz, then you got a zero. So I hope you got that done today. I told you a couple times. But anyway, on that map that I gave you, remember I showed you that map the other day? Let me get one. Here it is, this map right here. Okay, I want you to take three different colors, color the New England colonies, color the middle colonies one color, and color the southern colonies one color. The reason is so that you can identify by the colors and remember in your own noggin up here what the colonies are. Because next week, probably Wednesday, okay, probably Wednesday, I told you yesterday, I'd tell you, we are going to have a quiz on this. I'm going to give you a blank one. It's going to have numbers, and you're going to have to just write them in. And they must be spelled correctly and capitalized because they are proper nouns, okay? So I'm letting you know ahead of time, boom, this is going to be for Wednesday. Also, I'm probably going to be putting on chapter 7 here on Google Classroom. So even though we're not quite totally done with 6, I want you to start reading 7. I want you to be ahead of the game, okay? So this is going to be a good 9 weeks for you. It's going to be a fun 9 weeks. We're going to talk about a lot of different things, and I want you to be part of it. So you have to stay with me, okay? So staying with me, let's talk about this. Democracy. Do we know what democracy is? Do we know what democracy is not? What it is not is a monarchy, a dictatorship, any kind of a power takeover. Democracy is what we have today. People get to vote on things. They get to say so in government. Well, we didn't always have that. England didn't always have that. I should say we didn't, but England didn't always have that. But they would start it somehow, and that's what we're going to talk about today, how they would start it. Way back in the middle 1600s, when King Charles was king, you remember that? They were having a civil war over in England. Well, what about the colonies? It's not that they forgot about the colonies, but there was other things happening, and the colonies were left to fend for themselves, which they loved that idea because now they could come up with their own ideas about doing things, and they could rule themselves without worrying about the king 3,000 miles away telling them what they have to do. So they had a lot of freedoms, they had some rights they had, and they were living life pretty good as far as that went. But you know what happened to King Charles I? He was in a war and they lost, and the Parliament didn't like that idea. So the people of England, they cut his head off. Yeah, they cut his head off. England's good about cutting people's heads off. We know that. So the Puritans ran England from the Parliament for about 11 years. And then King Charles II came aboard. Okay. So King Charles II decided, hey, those colonies over there, we can make some money. So he sends his brother, James, the Duke of what? York. He goes over and he takes who? The Dutch. Remember the Dutch? And they renamed the place New York. That's right. So he was proprietor of New York. And so now the king, King Charles II, is starting to realize there's a lot of money to be made. So that's where we kind of pick up the story right about here. So let's take a look at this. King Charles II, he decided to do a few things. And he took Massachusetts and New Hampshire and made them into rural colonies. So you see a pattern here? Every time the king thinks they've gone far enough, that is far enough, he takes the colonies. Hmm, how does that work? Well, he is the king, and it's good to be the king, and you can do whatever you really want to. And what he did was, he is now in charge of those, running them the way he wants to run them, and also getting more money out of them, right? Well, King Charles lives for a while, but you can't live forever. And his brother James, the Duke of York, becomes James II. That's why I always had you write James the First when we talked about Jamestown. That's who Jamestown was named after. And now we have a James the Second, James the Second. And he continues on doing something what his brother did, but even more. And what he does is he takes all of New England, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and he adds New York and New Jersey. So we have six colonies into one, and the people don't like that because the House of Burgess is destroyed. He brings on his own governor and his own cabinet or crew, and they run all those colonies as one, almost like a little country. Wow, the people didn't like that very much because they lost some of their freedoms. And now they're back almost 20 years ago, like they were, living in England. What's one of the reasons why they came over here was to get some freedom, and they just took it right off them. So the guy they put in charge was this guy. His name was Sir Edmund Andros. I want you to know his name, Sir Edmund Andros. Okay, here he is. There's a nice little picture of Sir Edmund Andros, and I think he is in your book. I think he's in your book. You can take a look at him. He set up new, very strong restrictions and regulations for things like town meetings, if you could even have them. And if you did, you had to follow the rules about schools, if you even had those. There's that idea about keeping people under control and undereducated. Undereducated. And also the press. The press was only allowed to write and print what he wanted them to. People highly hated him. Highly hated him. And then he went one step even further. Up in Massachusetts, he decided that the Puritan church now was going to be the Anglican church or the Church of England. Isn't that the church they got kicked out of? So now they're doing just what they did over 20 years ago. This is not a good thing for them. Well, that's their story. But the good story is this. James II and the Dominion of New England are not going to last long. No, they're not. They're not going to last long. The people in England are thinking that King James is going to turn England into a Catholic nation again. Now, it hasn't been like that since before King Henry VIII in 1534. 1534. That is about 130 some years ago. Whoops. Let me go backwards. There we go. So let's take a look at this. In 1688, the English Parliament asked King James to sit down. I mean, sit way down. Get off the throne is what they asked him. Now, they could have cut his head off, but they didn't. They could have thrown him in jail, but they didn't. Instead, they said, if you stand down, we want your daughter to be queen. I could take a vacation, I guess, he says, or maybe I could retire. Plus, he'll save his head. So his daughter, Mary, and her husband, William of Orange. William of Orange. I love orange. Orange is my favorite color. William of Orange. They were both Protestant. Problem solved. Problem solved, because now it's never going to be Catholic as long as you got Protestants in there. And so William and Mary become the queen and the king. Now, if you remember, there is a college in Williamsburg, Virginia, named William and Mary. That's where it comes from. Very expensive. Thomas Jefferson went there, but a good college. Good college. So the people loved them. Matter of fact, they called this the Glorious Revolution. Here's the important part. The Glorious Revolution. It was a peaceful takeover. Peaceful takeover. Nobody was hurt. Nobody was killed. No windows were broken. No riots happened. It was all good. That's the way it's supposed to be. And so this glorious revolution led the people to believe, we like William and Mary. You know, when you have a ruler that likes the people tend to like him back. But when you have a ruler like Sir Edmund Andros, who doesn't care for the people aren't going to like them either. So that's a rule of thumb. That's a rule of thumb, pretty much. It's like having a boss. If the boss doesn't like his employees, the employees aren't going to like him. But if he does like the employees and lets them know how much he appreciates and likes them, he'll do anything for them, right? Well, just a year later, William and Mary went a little bit farther. They agreed to something called a Bill of Rights. A Bill of Rights. It limits their power. It limits their power. Now, you know, anybody that's got power wants one thing, more power, right? They want more power. So if you're a king, you don't want less power. You want more power. Unheard of. They gave up some of their power, and this gave the people rights and liberties or freedoms. They didn't know what to do with it. It was unbelievable. They never in England ever had freedom like this. It's amazing. Now, do we have a Bill of Rights today in America? Do we? Yes, we do. We do have a Bill of Rights. It's in something called our Constitution. And it's the first 10 amendments or changes in our Constitution are the Bill of Rights. Without them, we would be in big, big trouble. So we must never let anybody take those rights away from us. Never. But our Bill of Rights limits the power of our government from taking those rights away from us. Although there are people that have been trying to take those rights away from us, we must be very, very careful to always protect those. Always protect those. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom to assemble. That's just one. That's just one. That's just one amendment. That's the first one. So think about those. Maybe you want to look up the Bill of Rights when you get some free time. Now, I have a picture of William and Mary here, and I have a question for you. How old do you think they are? Hmm. It's a nice picture. Girls, would you wear a nice dress like this? Very expensive. Very expensive. And guys, would you wear silks like this? Before you say no, might want to try them. They're pretty silky. Very expensive. Well, I don't know if you can see this, but I'm going to put it up there. She is 10 and he is 22. They're not related. They're not related. They're very young and their waists are about this big. They're small people over there. Or they were anyway. That they got married. And a lot of times their marriages are arranged by their parents. So would you like to have your mom or dad pick out who you're going to marry? I mean, you guys guess you could learn to love them, but pretty young, don't you think? Here's what they look like a little later on. Let's go forward about, 10 or 15 years. Boom, whoops. There they are. Here's Mary. Here's William. Now, William led the army in some battles. And I believe he might have gotten hurt even a couple times. So he was no wimp about that. They were good people. They were good for England, and the people loved them. Now, there was a little bit of a problem over in the colonies. When they found out all this goodness that was going on here, what about old Edmund Andros that's causing a lot of trouble back there? You know, we're still one colony. We want to be 6 colonies like we were before. Oh, they almost forgot about that, didn't they? So, Andros tried to escape the people, but he got caught and they put him in prison. Now, that probably is against the law to be attacking a English official like that. And when they talked to the king and queen about it, they sent old Andros back to England. And here's what William and Mary did. They restored all those colonies so they all became one again. Instead of just one big one, they became 6 again. And the House of Burgess, it came back. The only thing they didn't get was their own governor. They appointed a royal governor, one for each of those colonies. So you got to give and take a little bit. It's called, compromise. Compromise. So let's go on a little bit further. Here's what I'd like you to know about Bacon's rebellion in 1676, Nathaniel Bacon. So I'm going to kind of tell you the story. Here it is up here, but I know you can't really read it as well. In any case, let me tell you the true story about this. Nathaniel Bacon was on general council in Jamestown. Okay, the governor was Sir William Berkeley. They were related. I believe they were brother-in-laws. So there was a little bit of a competition there. Sir William Berkeley wanted Jamestown to remain contained. And they were trading furs and doing a pretty good job. Old Nathan Bacon, he believed that Berkeley wasn't doing a job and wasn't protecting them from the Native Americans that were in the area. They weren't attacking. It was okay. It's because Bacon wanted to expand the area into Indian territory. To do that, you're going to have to fight people, and people are going to die, and people are going to get hurt. That's what Berkeley was trying not to do. So Bacon continued to argue the point to where the point he got kicked off the council. He did attack some Indians. He did win with about 200 men. So he got put back on the council after he apologized. And Berkeley let him back on the council. First mistake. It wasn't long before they were arguing again, and Bacon got a little hissy fit. And before you know it, he had 1,000 men following him. 1,000 men. And they attacked the Indians again, and they won big time. But now you've got 3 or 4 different Indian tribes that want to attack Jamestown. Not good. Now you've got lots of enemies. So he said, I'm going to go into Jamestown and burn it to the ground. Well, they came in, but Berkeley had 1,200 men, Bacon's 1,000. They held him off for a while. There was about 12 or 13 men that were killed or wounded, and Berkeley and some of his men went down to James River and they escaped for a while. But they met the demands of Bacon about burning the town. So there was 2 men, Mr. Lawrence um, and a Mr. Drummond. I know you can't read all that. Mr. Lawrence and Mr. Drummond had the 2 nicest houses in Jamestown, and they decided they would burn their own house. And maybe that would solve the problem and Bacon and his men would just go away. So they did. That was the solution. They burnt their houses down, and when the soldiers saw that they burnt their houses down, Bacon's soldiers, they took that as an example and burnt the rest of the town down, including the church and the state hall. That's not good. So the plan failed big time. And now the governor is going to be looking for Bacon again. So let me go back to what Bacon looks like. If you can see, there's a picture of him. What do you think? Wear that jacket? I like it. I like it. That's Nathaniel Bacon. Now, in July 30th of 1676, Bacon writes a Declaration of the People. Declaration of the People. And he lists all of the grievances and the charges against the governor did against the people. He called them crimes. Ironically, 100 years to the day almost, July 4th, 1776, Thomas Jefferson would write a Declaration of Independence and list all the crimes that the king did against the people, the colonists. Something, isn't it? 100 years makes a big difference. So in October of 1676, the British Marines arrive from England and they go looking for Bacon. Nathaniel Bacon, not the Bacon. That's for breakfast. Well, they don't find him because Bacon died. Yeah, he did. He died of something called the bloody flux. Bloody flux in October of 1676. And his men took his body and buried it where nobody could find it. Because you know the British, they like to take people apart and hang them in trees. And they didn't know what they would do to Nathaniel Bacon for causing all this ruckus. So they buried him. Nobody knows where he is, even today. Even today. Now, this all happened in Henrico County, where my daughter lives, and they're always building something down there. We go down there, there's a building there, and there's a big building over there. One of these days, they're going to dig somewhere and find the bones of old Nathaniel Bacon. He's out there someplace. He's out there someplace. So one of these days, they're bound to find him somewhere, maybe under a tree, like Roger Williams. You better start looking under apple trees. So the governor takes revenge on all the people that were involved in this revolution, you might call it, and he starts hanging them. He hung almost 17 people before they finally stopped, and the king was really upset because he had pardoned all these people. He said they were all okay, let them go. Well, Berkeley was killing them all. So they got Berkeley back to England, and within a year, almost to the day in July of 1677, Berkeley died. So I guess what goes around comes around. Wow, those are some trying times now. There were some trying times. So let's go on just a little bit further. Boop. and we're going to talk about freedom and what happened because of this. Bacon's rebellion, this is the significant part here, it changed the way that the king looked at Virginia. It really did. Changed the way that he looked at it. And he started to allow them to have more freedom. King relaxed the way that he ruled Virginia and let them rule themselves a little bit more. And so they had more freedom. So Bacon's rebellion was good for them. One last thing. I thought I'd write down here what the bloody flux is. They call it dysentery. And only the reason I put that there is because we're going to talk about a lot of people that get dysentery that die back in these days. Dysentery is a common but potentially serious disorder of the digestive system, the digestive tract that occurs throughout the world. So this isn't just for here, it happens all over the world. It can be caused by a number of infectious agents ranging from viruses, bacteria, protozoa, and even parasitic worms. It may also result from the chemical irritation in the intestines. You can look that up for yourself, the rest of it, and find out what it does to you, but it totally dehydrates you. People were dying of this. Daniel Bacon died of it. So I'm going to stop here for today, and hopefully I can pick this up tomorrow. All right? So continue to read on section 4, and I'll be seeing you later. Oh, I'm going to put on uh, guided reading 6-4, and I want you to go ahead and fill that out for yourself. Fill it out for yourself. I'm not going to take points on it, but I want you to have that because we will probably have a quiz on section 3 and 4 maybe next week. Maybe next week. Okay? So I want you to be ready for that. All right. And I will talk to you as soon as I can. Bye.